Right. Welcome, everyone. This is the fourth meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee's budget work group. Today is Friday, May 3rd, and we will be here from 12 to 1:30. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Our chair, Terry, will facilitate today's meeting. Next slide, please. Before I turn it over to Terry, I'm just going to go over some meeting logistics. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A copy of the recording will be posted on the transition website under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. To access closed captioning, you can click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. For committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks in attendance can see the chat. And please remember that the chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Q&A feature available in Zoom, and you can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not always live answer questions, but we read them all, and they also become part of the public meeting record. At today's meeting, we're not taking verbal public comment. If you want to give verbal public comment to the committee, you can sign up now to do that at our next full meeting on Wednesday, May 15th. You can also submit comment at any time by calling 311, by emailing us at transition@portlandoregon.gov, or by submitting an online form on the transition website. With that, we can go to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Terry to introduce today's agenda. Thanks.
Right, so here's today's agenda. I think we've got a decent amount of time to do what we need to do today, but here's how it's organized. Some quick business. We'll go revisit our budget process that we kind of redesigned. Talk about that and talk about our early stakeholder engagement. And then we will talk about our recommendations to improve the budget's community engagement. And then we'll talk about the summer engagement plan, next steps, and then we'll be done. It's a small group today, so we'll be able to knock this out in an efficient manner. Next slide. The next slide. Yeah, that one. Well,
sorry,
okay.
is it not for folks? Is it not
No,
say work?
I'm seeing it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's the business slide.
Oh, okay, so we're on the business slide. Excused absences. We're expected everybody here. Approve the meeting summary. Review working agreements. Review time.
So I can move to approve the meeting summary for last month.
Second.
Any changes? Nothing? Okay. All those in favor, it passes. Now we're on the working agreements. This is where I remind everybody that I'm a conscientious objector to these things. And since we've been using them for a year and reading them at every meeting for a year, can I just waive the reading list? If somebody else wants to read them, feel free, but I'm hoping we can just skip ahead 2 slides. You okay with that?
That's fine with me.
Okay, so let's.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to the timeline. This is basically the same timeline as you saw before. Today we're meeting to vote on our recommendations that we're going to send to GTAC. And once we do that, GTAC will meet on the 15th. They'll give us their feedback, and then we'll meet again the week of the 20th to make any revisions that the full GTAC has. And then over the summer, we will send those recommendations out for more detailed, broader community engagement. In late July, we'll check in with the district's council operations committee on how the engagement is going. And then in late August, we will meet jointly with the district council operations committee and revise final recommendations, all aiming towards a September meeting, getting a full GTAC kind of approval of the final recommendations. So that's the plan. What that means is we only have another meeting the week of the 20th of May. And then after that, it'll be sort of out in the public and meeting jointly with the districts and council operations. So any questions, anything on that? Yeah, Fred? You're muted.
Fred, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. You're still muted. There you
Thank
go.
you, Zach. I realized that I just hit the wrong button and suddenly I was out of this altogether. I couldn't find the mute button. Thank you. May 6th at 12 p.m. feedback on draft document 2. Is that feedback from us or from the budget office or what?
That's from us to get it to GTAC in time. Right?
Okay.
Right, Julia?
I'm sorry, you're on the May 6th?
May 6th. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I realize it's not a lot of time, but I think Terry and we can take your draft recommendations document and revise it based on the conversation that you all have today. And, we can commit to doing that quickly. I don't know if it'll be this afternoon or tomorrow morning or something. And then you don't have to. I mean, I feel like Terry and I can probably, do it, but we just wanted to give you a couple days if you want to look at it and say, yeah, this reflects our conversation, or propose any changes, not substantively, right? But changes just to better reflect the conversation that you all have today. So we realize, yeah, it's not a lot of time, and Tara and I will take any feedback you do give us, and then we'll submit it to GTAC on Wednesday of next week.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, anything else on this? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here we are. We're going to talk about our process again. Just remember that what we're doing here is we trial ballooned a process schedule of budget steps, and that was shared out to some internal stakeholders like the budget office, the folks working on council operations, and folks. And we got some feedback. We were hoping to get more feedback, but the feedback that we got was good, thoughtful, and didn't really identify any major issues, I guess, would be the way I characterize it generally. So next slide, please, and we'll go through what little change we made. So here's the first half of 2 slides. Basically made here a couple smallish clarifying changes, like clarifying that the committee of the whole was going to be actually meeting as the budget committee under state law. That I think is a decent interpretation of the state law and a decent interpretation of how the city is working and would be working with the new council, but just sort of made that explicit so that people would understand it. And we clarified a little bit there under beginning like the trial budget resolution and beginning the outreach to advisory bodies and community-based organizations. Just saying a little clearer what's happening at that point. I think that's mostly it for this page. So let's go to the next slide. So this one, this is actually where we are in the current budget process. We can see it sort of playing out and how it would be different. And I don't think this changed much since last meeting. This in just my own comment on this, this still seems so compressed that you get a mayor's proposed budget, you go immediately to a hearing, and then things go bang, 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 bang. But this sort of stuff comes straight out of the charter. So it's not much that can be done here. But that's our schedule. Any comments, suggestions, stuff on this that we need to further clarify? Good.
Yeah, can you go back, June, to the previous page, the pre-May 5th? And so public, I'm looking at where the public comment is prior to May. And there seems to be plenty. Workshops, council standing committees. So February, March, advisory bodies provide early input, and that is with the council or the mayor or both.
I guess if you're looking at the January, February part,
Yeah.
it's probably both, but it's still in the mayor's to-do list at that.
And then, yes, you have a council resolution. What does that mean?
That is something that just sort of sets the schedule.
Okay.
In research from other jurisdictions, they all sort of, set the budget schedule very early on, made it really clear. And they sort of do that now, but just the legislators.
So I think it works fine as long as it matches up with our concerns about advisory committees, citizen input and engagement prior to May 5th. But it seems like maybe there needs to be an addendum or greater narrative. For instance, like council resolution. What does that mean? It's a little too truncated and open to, I don't know, misinterpretation, I suppose, or just confusion. Resolution sets full engagement, council resolution. I would say capital C, capital R then, and then I wish okay. You're compressing a lot in shorthand. I just wonder if we're not short on explanation. Sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point. We don't have a lot of narrative that goes along with this. We also don't have the really detailed feedback from the budget office yet. So I think at some point we'll flesh it out, but it won't be in time for GTAC. Yes.
Could also,
Okay.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking it could also be a space where we earmark these kinds of questions for the community engagement piece. I'm thinking especially like with the resolution for full engagement schedule that comes from the council. Does that include the in-district budget hearings? It would be nice to be able to communicate that months in advance versus weeks. So yeah, we'll obviously have more clarity from what CBO responds to, but it also might be a place where we can provide some detail from community engagement.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, okay, next slide. Okay, so here we'll talk about the early stakeholder engagement. We have some time set aside to reflect on it. We're not gonna present it. Got a copy of it in the email this meeting. So what are we talking about here? This is the survey, basically, that we sent out to members and staff of the Budget Advisory Commission committees. And yes, well, I guess we're just going to open it up for reflections at this point. What we're going to do next is do the recommendations. So if you have recommendations that flow out of this, I guess, feel free to preview them now. Just generally, I thought it was really interesting response. And I thought our survey was pretty well designed to get those responses. So I feel actually pretty good about it. But other comments? Fred? Fred, are you going to comment on the engagement?
I'm sorry, but Mark had his earbuds screwed up. So I didn't want you to have to listen to Adele. Yeah, I thought this was an amazing confirmation of what we suspected along, that there was an inconsistency in pointing to and staffing of and participation and feedback for citizens sitting on citizen budget advisory committees. Just the range of them and the fact that there had been a similar effort at understanding their processes in 2019, and that nothing came of that confirms for me that we're on the right track. That there needs to be a consistency so that expectations throughout the government and throughout the community are the same, regardless of the bureau or service area that in question, as far as are they listening are they asking for my advice? Are they listening to me? And have they made any, has my response made any difference? In other words, the feedback. So I appreciated the amount of response that we did get, and that it was across the board. I mean, just all the variations thereof. Some people were very excited about it. The one thing that struck me the most was how several of them said that they just never heard back, whether they were heard at all. And they didn't get information until basically the agency submitted their budget to the mayor or the council, sort of going back to what we heard from Mr. Salinger and his testimony to the council regarding Citizens Utility Board. So thank you, Julia and Terry, for helping get that out, and for Zach sharing it with the Community Life organization.
Yeah, actually, and Zach, I guess you want to talk about your one-on-one types of meetings, because I thought that was really interesting. And actually, thanks for pointing out the Multnomah County version of this. And the Multnomah County version is quite the fiasco, apparently. With similar problems. So, Zach, any other comment?
Yeah, well, so I guess working backwards, this is the first time I've been more closely involved in the county process and learning about it that way, where they have department level backs and there's supposed to be a city coordinated committee where there should be representation from every department and um, every department back, for example, and that not being necessarily happening um, means that it's kind of a not a city of Portland problem only in this kind of work. It has been, I think there's two major recommendations that I've gleaned from observations and then conversations with civic life and with individual one-on-one folks, which is it would be really nice to have a 2 year budget cycle in which there is more opportunity to um, plan for departments or bureaus and have kind of a more robust community engagement process. But also there's genuine interest in having the bureau advisory committees or an advisory committee, community advisory committee, be year round, and to have some of the kind of onboarding work that happens in this compressed seasonal timeline taken care of to provide some familiarity of the priorities. It still is concerning, with the survey questions and response that there's a potential disconnect of either perceived or real impact of advice or input from the community advisory committees and response from city. And so maybe there's embedded in there some kind of guidance that we could provide with our recommendations. But I wanted to elevate the annual rather like kind of a perennial cycle versus the seasonal one, and the real desire, I think, much more so from departments to have it be a 2 year budget cycle. And that's in reality too, from my experience, where cities might be contracting or things of that nature and having to go through a recontracting process every year. It's just compressed and maybe not as beneficial for improved efficiency in city services.
Great. Any other reflections on this? I will say the county process sounded like a bit of a staffing meltdown. I mean, I think they were having problems meeting quorum, filling positions, doing the basic committee maintenance, and which was a legit problem. We at GTAC, I think, are quite spoiled with our staffing levels and the ability to do things and keep things on track. The county's meltdown of their advisory committee was it seemed like no one was in charge of doing the basic. So I think if there's a recommendation that comes out of it, it's that these committees need to be, if not staffed, need to have the authority to function on their own. So, anyway, that's it. Any final thoughts on the engagement stuff that you've seen, heard? I think the summer engagement would be interesting. Okay, next slide, I guess. So we're in the recommendations. And let's see, let's go to the next slide. Or just, yeah, you can go to the next. So these are the draft that we sort of put out. We made a few changes between our last meeting and this draft. We reordered them a little bit to make a little better sense, get better engagement, I think. I think in the text, in the narrative, we fleshed it out quite a bit more to make, to clarify and expand on some things. We made some changes to clarify what we meant about improving the advisory bodies. We made a new recommendation here on where to place responsibilities for engagement. We removed the participatory budgeting item as a recommendation, but it's still mentioned in our narrative. And then all the questions that were embedded in our narrative, we sort of took those out and sort of brought them back to the committee to hold on to them as we go into the summer engagement. Because those are the questions that I still need to be answered through engagement. So this is where we are. Those were the changes that we made. We've got, I think, plenty of time to do this. I think what's going to happen is Julia is going to keep notes of our conversation. So feel free to, we have new proposals. You can, now's the time to propose them. If you want to change these proposals somehow, now's the time to do that. But that's where we are. And when we're done with this, we're going to vote to move them on to the 14th. So maybe I'm on board with that. Fred, you're up.
Yeah, there's a couple of terms here that I don't remember are developing. Like a citywide community engagement department is a term that's unfamiliar to me. I know that there's community life and communications as two of the four disciplines that are in the assistant city administrator's purview or in the city administrator's office, since they apply to all 6 service areas and so appropriately, as well as legal counsel and government relations and sustainability, et cetera, have application to all 6 service areas or government-wide issues. You say later, or was it in the narrative, since there isn't a citywide community engagement department, and I didn't quite get the resolution of that. What our recommendation is that one is in addition
that's a good
to
point.
community life and communications, or that they figure out in the city administrator's office how to coordinate community engagement in the budget, in coordination with the budget office and et cetera. That's one concern. The second concern is exploring technical advisory committees. I don't remember a conversation about that. I do like the idea of dissolving the bureau-specific budget advisory committees because I don't think they work, and we're trying to eschew the siloization of 26 bureaus, some having, but citizens with some input from them or not, depending on the quality of the communications. But I was thinking conceptually of service area citizen budget advisory committees, but then maybe we're not interested in citizens that have a particular interest or expertise in any one of the 6 service areas or major components in any of those 6, but rather people who have more familiarity with waterworks or transportation projects and their effect on the community or on neighborhoods, et cetera. And so technical advisory committees make a lot of sense. Our I want to say bureaucrats, are they getting, or city employees, managers getting enough and sufficient and methodical input from members of the community that could inform them better of how they could operate, spend their money, and do so to the benefit of the citizens, a greater benefit. Is that what you're meaning by technical, as possible
Yeah, I guess
technical advisory?
actually to both of your questions, it's probably a terminology thing that we need to figure out and be careful about. Points well taken. The community engagement department, for example, it isn't a department. I don't think it's going to be a department, or it's going to be a bureau or an office or whatever it is. It is community engagement will be one of the disciplines that we don't know how that's going to be organized yet. But the idea here, and maybe this needs just to be clarified in this language, is that the engagement around the budget should be centralized with people that do engagement for a living. And that's probably a centralized office coming out of the city administrator's office, assuming that that's how the org chart ends up. So that's that one. And then on the technical advisory committees, it's something that I think you raise an issue, and it needs to sort of go out to the public for engagement and listening. Some of the feedback that we got in listening sessions was, you want people who have good experience to be able to give advice, and gets people that are smart about, sewer pipe to give advice about sewer pipe. And maybe you want some expertise on these committees, and not just merely community members who signed up. I think that's part of it.
I was hoping that be the case, and I think we should mention that. Could you say explore service area budget / technical advisory committees, or
Yeah, I guess we can try and figure out a way to make that clearer.
Means of ensuring that citizen expertise is involved in any advisory committees, especially for those regarding budgets. And then revisit the citywide community budget advisory board. There is one, right? And it's just 3 people, is that right, Julia? Right. Yeah, so I'm certainly happy to change that.
That's correct. I think it's my understanding that because of the size of Portland, the budget committee is the governing body of the jurisdiction, right? There's state law about that. So our budget committee at the city, right, is city council. However, city councils can pass by resolution, even larger cities, to have like this other budget committee that then has requirements under state law. Mm-hmm. And I believe that one of those requirements is the budget committee then has to have an equal number of community members as electeds. So I believe Portland should be 5 to meet the number of our electeds, though I also believe there's currently maybe 3 folks.
I think it's 3 electeds and 3 non-electeds, 3 citizens. It just is an equal number. It doesn't have to be all electeds, right? It's an advisory board. It's not the.
Yeah, I sent a request to the city attorney's office for clarification on state law related to budget committees, and I'm waiting on that response.
Okay. Yeah,
so
I don't think
I
think we wait until we see. I don't have a problem with that language. I would go back to item 4, proposal 4 and just eliminate in a citywide community engagement department and just say that place primary responsibility, et cetera, for community engagement in the budget process within the city administrator's office. Then we don't, does that work? Since we don't have a citywide community engagement department, we don't want to muddy the waters, I think, and get crosswise of what they're trying to study with the community engagement and how to structure those disciplines under the city administrator's office. I mean, we can certainly put input on that, but I don't think we should come up with a different and probably never going to happen all capitalized new department.
Okay, other things. Jose, you want to talk about participatory budgeting? I think saw your thing in the chat. It was sort of removed, yeah, because there's a ballot measure pending. It's either going to get its signatures or not. After that, maybe we'll have advice, but that's just going to be floating out on its own, I think. We mentioned it briefly in the text that we're aware of it, but it's sort of up to them to get their signatures before. I don't know.
Yeah, I just mentioned it because I think participatory budgeting is a good idea, and it's kind of what the charter wanted to do. And whether or not the ballot measure passes, the ballot measure is like very specific language, very specific things. I would still say that we could recommend that there be some kind of participatory budgeting implemented in the new budget process, whether it's what gets passed by measure or that doesn't pass and they still enact some sort of because there are many people opposing the measure for different reasons. So some say it's too much money, some say it's too little. So that it might not if it doesn't pass, it might not be because people don't want participatory budgeting. There's a myriad of other reasons. So I think if we do want to put a recommendation around that, I could still see that being good. I've seen it, or I've read about and heard about it working in a lot of different places really positively. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I suspect what's going to happen, no matter what we do now, is if the participatory budgeting folks are smart, they will engage with us over the summer and tell us to put that in as a recommendation. That would, then maybe we could make a recommendation in the fall or late summer based on the engagement. I think we're going to hear about it one way or another. But any other comments?
I would just respond to that GTAC cannot take a position on ballot measures. And that it would have to be value neutral. We can address it, but we can't use any language that suggests that it's good or bad. I mean, that the voters should vote for it in particular or against it. But I'm certainly willing, once says if and when a measure gets on, to hear from the community and from Jim Labby and others to see what they would propose we say or do.
If someone created a ballot measure that had a recommendation we've made, or why couldn't we? I'm not saying we come out in support or against the ballot measure, but we could still come out with our own recommendation on participatory budget, not mention the measure, but we could still say we support or don't support this. Why do you think we can't? What if someone came
because there's only, if they get enough signatures, there will be only one measure in front of the voters, and it will be this November. And And so anything we say, you're saying that if we said something now is what you're proponing, so that it facilitates signature gathering and a success.
No, I'm saying that we come up with recommendations based on what we want to recommend, not what it might possibly happen in the future on possible ballot measures, because we haven't thought about other ballot measures that could come from other recommendations. What if someone put in a ballot measure that said all city councilors need more than one staff? Then what do we take? No longer talk about our recommendation to have more, you know what I
Well,
mean?
we don't know. We know that none of those signatures, there's no petitions filed to gather signatures for such of those ideas. We do know that there is signature gathering and paid signature gathering for this one form of participatory budgeting. And I, for one, am uncertain how I would vote on the measure on participatory budgeting. I'm listening to the pros and cons as we speak, and I certainly would not want to propone participatory budgeting in our recommendations. I don't think that I think what we're addressing here is a much broader and far more important comprehensive means of increasing community engagement in what the city does, how it gets its money and how it spends it.
But
And
I'd argue that participatory budgeting is the best way to increase community engagement in the budget process.
you do
That's
think
why I think, yeah, I think participatory budget is the #1 way to get people more engaged
All
in
right.
the budget. They've shown that in a lot of cities.
all right.
Well,
I don't know that, Jose, and I'm not ready to vote to
yeah,
say that.
let me try and wrap this up. I don't know that we have the ability to weigh in one way or the other just generally at this point. I think we're going to hear about it all summer long. It is tricky for the commission to be weighing in on ballot measures. I know the Charter Commission got wrapped up in this too, because they couldn't actually promote the ballot measure. They could only speak about it factually. And they had to scrub the website of things that were promoting the charter changes, because that could be conceived as campaigning. So it is tricky for us to do that if they get the signatures. If they don't get the signatures, maybe we make a revised recommendation later in the summer. But okay, anything else? Are there other proposals that you want to talk about on our draft? I think our draft is pretty good, basically. I would like to hear more from the budget committee or budget office, but they are just so insanely busy at this particular moment in time. We will have to take their input in parallel, I guess. So,
Terry, I want to understand, are you trying to get the goal of this conversation and as the last time to give input for the current draft as it stands before we present it to the full committee?
yeah, that's where we are. We've got a pretty mature draft and pretty good recommendations, I think, based on the input we have received. They hold up pretty well, but in order to meet all the deadlines to get it out in front of the public in June and July, we got to hit the May 15th GTAC, which is where we are.
Understood. And then how are you just taking in inputs right now that Fred and Jose have given, and then you're gonna loop back with us, or are we trying to come to consensus with the things that are being addressed right now?
We're to the extent that we can get consensus. Julia is keeping notes on another slide, the next slide, that we will actually vote on, the group of us here. to the extent that we can. And that will be what goes to G. Right?
Thanks.
Okay. Other things.
I don't know if I saw this in here, but just looking at the survey, is there anything that we want to add around? I know we've talked about kind of subject matter experts to being on these advisory committees, and do we want to say anything about compensation, or is that in the draft that I missed?
Good question. I think, on my community engagement hat, that seems to be typical with most city level engagement things these days. That compensation is offered, and it was offered to us. I think that's typical with these committees, but you can probably add that. Anything else? All right, if not, Julia, are you ready to go up to the next slide? Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is what we were just talking about. An edit to the community engagement department phrasing. Talk about the edits to the technical advisory committees, and figure out what to do with participatory budgeting. So these would be, let's see, so these would be amendments. We would vote on these amendments and then vote on these plus the full roster from the last slide, and that would be what goes. So any further discussion on that first one, just the edit to the community engagement? Can I bring that to a vote? All those in favor of that edit?
Comment there. You've used centralized twice. Can you just say use it the first time with centralized with people who do engagement for a living, probably within the city, or just not even probably, say within the city administrator's office?
We'll use whatever language they're currently using for, yeah.
What, Terry? I mean, it seems to me that the current language of the structure, government reorg structure, has all of those people centralized within the city administrator's office under the assistant city administrator. So I don't think we should be saying centralized twice.
Okay, I hear you.
Okay. It's just
I'm just to make clear, I mean, we're not wordsmithing this at this point, right? It's just the concepts of trying to communicate the revisions that staff and our chair Terry would clarify by the time that we would submit it to GTAC. So I hear your point, Fred, and I think I have faith that Terry and Julia will incorporate that in their wordsmithing, and we don't need to belabor it over this meeting.
thank you, Zach.
Okay, so back to that. Assuming we get the words right, be okay with doing that. Okay, so I count all thumbs up for that one. On the technical advisory committee, let's move on to that one. Be sure that we get some budget expertise and then add stipends to members. Are those both okay? one or the other okay? Are we both okay on these? Zach, you okay with this?
I guess I have a little bit of hesitation about ensuring membership being community members with this specific expertise, because I think it starts to wade into the possibility of like lobbying or something that could be construed that would be harmful. I mean, there are other ways that we can get technical expertise that doesn't necessitate that they be on the committee. They can provide public. I mean, if we had public comment within the advisory committees, I'm just thinking realistically, it would be nice to have some diversity of perspective and professional expertise to be brought, because otherwise we'll be kind of in this, I don't know, a little bit of a myopic view of like what the Water Bureau does, and then we end up with a $3 billion project that, you know, could have been avoided potentially with a broader community insight.
I'm thinking, I know what you're saying, Zach, and with just limiting it to budget expertise, I have this image in mind of, say, in what's it, central services, the government support, that first service area. There's asset management, how the city employees deal with all the property they own and maintaining it to, unlike the Kenton Firehouse, and so that it's usable, and they amortize it appropriately, etc. And I would think that the city would benefit by having, say, probably not the school district, but asset manager, but some property manager of a large company that has like a lot of branch stores or the like, to say, there's a whole profession of how to best deal with property management, and I think that the city's that service area committee, same with IT, that without being lobbied by a particular firm or something, you at least have some professional expertise outside of, they need to hear from other people. They're not going to show up at a public hearing per se and get into the nitty gritty of, you know, lifespan of a particular piece of software or something.
I'm sorry, Fred.
So is that what you're thinking, Zach, is getting to a broader, beyond just budget expertise, to having some, we're going to have a technical advisory committee, have some technical expertise as well as being members of the community?
Folks, I apologize so much for the interruption, but I don't know if folks saw Money's comment in the chat that she has to leave early. So Money, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you want to give your perspective?
Yeah,
on
that's
these
okay.
changes?
Sorry.
Sorry.
It was a half day at school today, till very recently. So sorry for the short notice on that. But I think I understand the essence of what Fred is saying, and what I was putting in chat with it called a technical advisory committee. Technical to me implicitly means somebody that has that subject matter expert. So I don't know if we have to be as explicit, or we could use language of a budget subject matter expert, so it doesn't feel exclusionary, Zach, because I understand what you were saying as well, that we want to be able to have to not be exclusive. And then I think we're also trying to match, I thought I read that in the survey, of like folks that understand maybe they don't understand the process, the city budget process, but they understand, they have budgetary background or experience within their work life or various other roles that they play.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can have like, you can go back and forth and maybe like saying something about a proportion. I just want, you know, there's a certain level of exclusion by having a certain technical expertise. And if we're trying to be inclusive in getting community engagement on technical issues that will affect communities, like I just want to make sure that we have those values represented in those technical elements of the budget. And so I don't know how to call that out, and maybe it's just not calling it out, but simply stating it in a narrative. But that's my only concern. We bring in very technical expertise on one certain thing, and we'll most likely get a minority excluded from representation. That's my main concern.
I gotta jump, but the only thing I would say in response to that is maybe we better explain what a technical advisory committee means and don't be super prescriptive of who is a part of that body.
Yeah, I think
Technical just has a connotation, so I don't understand if hearing your rationale, Zach, of like, it's the purposes for more community engagement on technical matters, then it's not a technical expert, right? It's somebody that's responding to a specific thing. Anyhow, sorry,
Yeah,
I gotta go.
think this
I'm
is
indifferent
great.
about the stipends. I vote yes for the participatory budgeting piece. I think we could just add a recommendation that is not related to the ballot initiative, particularly if it was in the previous work, which I thought it was, but for whatever that's worth.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Minnie.
I do think that that conversation goes right to the core of what these budget committees are doing or not doing, and what their purposes are, and what they're supposed to be advising about. And, I think that goes out to the public for engagement as to what do you want these to do. It's a really good question. Okay, so those of us that are left, are we okay with what?
All right, Jose has his hand up. I don't know if
Yeah,
you can see it.
Just real quick, the stipends, we might want to check. I've been told that some committees can't get stipend by law, and that I've been told in the past that budgets committees are not allowed to get stipends. So we might want to check. I might be wrong. That's why I'm saying we might want to check. I have been told that though. I know with school board, we're not allowed to give our budget committees stipends.
Okay. Gotcha. Any further discussion on the advisory committee stipends stuff? Good on this, Zach, Fred?
Sorry, my notes now though for the first bullet under advisory committees has like different things in it. So I think I need to, and it's not repopulated. Oh, thanks. So I've heard 3 different things now. So there's like Fred's initial add community members with budget expertise. Then there was Money's suggestion of maybe just removing the word technical and just calling them service area advisory committees. And then I think it was Zach who was like, well, or maybe we use budget subject matter expertise, or someone said that. I think it was Zach. So I think I need a little bit, maybe more clarification on that one.
Well, actually, if you go back to the previous slide, maybe that's where we need to make it might be simply when we say explore service area technical advisory committees, maybe it's just explore service area advisory committees.
That was Money's suggestion, I think.
And just leave it at that. And then in the narrative, we can talk about where the tension is and stuff that we might be interested in hearing from the community. Does that sound all right? Brad, you good with that?
Oh, well, I was just wondering yeah, I think that's a good approach. I like Zach's language of budget subject matter expertise if we're gonna use technical advisory committee, but again, I don't know, it's sort of like, you're talking, let's say, Public Works, there's quite a range of expertises, and budgetary, knowledge between water, sewer, and roads. I mean, they all probably need, some kind of technical advice on what each of them are doing. On the other hand, they need to coordinate and collaborate, and that's the deputy city administrator's job through the city administrator's office, ensuring that there's adequate community engagement and communication about what they're doing. So that, to me, that's like a service area, citizen budget technical advisory committee. So I'd leave again, the wordsmithing, I take Zach's admonition to heart and not try to wordsmith it, but I liked his original language about budget technical, what was it? Budget expertise, not they're within a budget subject, they've got some expertise to advise the bureau on, or the service area.
Okay, so that brings us down to participatory budgeting and what to do about that. I mean, we had it in there originally. I think then we took it out. The question is to put it back in again. It just sort of depends. I mean, I think it puts it in a spot that it depends on whether they get the signatures or not, because then we have to have a different approach to community engagement. Maybe it's just simply explore participatory budgeting, keep it that general. I think was what our original text was, but happy to hear from you all. Zach, what do you think?
So my initial thought is it could be one of the sub bullets of recommendation 4, which is placing primary responsibility for design, coordination, and implementation of community engagement. And it can suggest like explore participatory budgeting or something to the effect that's not a reference to any sort of measure or anything that could be perceived as such. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're uplifting the role and the responsibility of this kind of, like, we're not calling it department, but that discipline and community engagement within the city administrator's office. And so I find it appropriate to, at least we could do a EG or, like add it as among other alternatives, and or identify and suggest, acknowledging that other cities use this as one example or one way of getting more community engagement. So I think hopefully that alleviates some of the tension and apprehension that Fred has, but just a thought.
Fred.
Yeah, I'm really only comfortable without an opinion from the city attorney's office of the footnote we have on page 2 of the narrative of our recommendations. And that's very specific regarding that participatory budgeting, and that there is a petition circulating, and that should it get on the ballot, we need to address it. And that goes to your point, Terry, that if it gets on the ballot, I mean, and as you say, we're basically today inviting input, comments from the public on whether that's a sufficient recommendation on the part of GTAC. But I again caution us about taking a position on a proposed or potential ballot measure, which in fact I hope succeeds to get on the ballot. But again, I don't think GTAC should be taking a position other than what we say in the footnote at this point. Now, again, if it gets on the ballot, again, with city attorney guidance, since we're a public entity, what can we say further? But that's, again, my apprehension, and my concern at this point.
Jose.
And
Well, first of all, the participatory budget discussion around charter has been around way longer than this ballot measure has been. It was discussed when the Charter Commission started. That was one of the things they had planned on being part of the charter. So it's not something that we're doing because of a ballot measure. And like I agree with, and what I was trying to say, and I'm glad Manny pointed it out, is that I'm not saying we endorse or because the ballot measure is a very specific way to do participatory budgeting that they're proposing for the city of Portland. I'm not proposing that we say, let's do that. I'm saying that we do that. I believe participatory budgeting is one of the best tools cities have done to get citizens to engage with the budget process and to learn about the project process. And I've read about New York and Arizona, a lot of places that do it, where the people that are part of this process are then feel like they can sit on budget committees. There's a lot that can be gained from participatory budgeting. So I think there is a lot of good that could come from it. We shouldn't say anything about the ballot measure. We shouldn't maybe even go into specifics, but maybe just like Zach said, enacting some sort of exploring some sort of participatory budgeting within the city, I think is something that is completely within the bounds of GTAC to recommend.
I disagree to that, Jose. How about explore the potential of and the advantages of participatory budgeting? Zach's recommendation. I just to add an act at this stage in the petition filing and gathering process in an election year, I think is illegal. And
I disagree with you.
I kind of like Zach's approach, and if we put and explore the potential of bullet in our recommendation number 4, using much of the footnote language, I think that's enough that it's there. It's not taken aside. It would probably survive whether they get the signatures or not. Maybe if we can put it in a way that I'm just worried about the neutrality of it if
Right.
they get the signature.
Same, that's where I wouldn't use advantages. I would say the potential of and facility of, or or just the potential of increasing community engagement via participatory budgeting.
Yeah.
That's advantages. If you'd have to balance that again. I used to have to opine on these in the state elections office because every public statement about a ballot measure would have to go to us for approval. I would otherwise say advantages or disadvantages of. So that's why I think just the potential of increasing community engagement is value neutral in regards to any possible measure. And I hope, Jose, you can agree to that.
I don't agree with you. I disagree. I also think there's ballot measures about the police oversight. Does that mean that no one can ever talk about the police oversight? Like there are ballot measures about all kinds of things. We're
It
not
means that no one in
specifically.
the city can talk about.
Fred, I'm talking.
Okay.
Like, I'm not talking about specifically what this one specific ballot measure is proposing. They're proposing a very specific way to do participatory budgeting when there could be a different way. And that's why I'm saying we should do some. A lot of people, their biggest hangup with the ballot measure as written is just the amount of money. They don't even care about doing participatory budgeting. They just don't want as much money into it, or it's too little. So for me, the ballot measure is very specific, and we shouldn't comment on that. But I do believe that participatory budgeting would be important to enact. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'll lay my cards out. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's a bad policy. It's bad governance. It's bad for progressive organizing. It's bad for community budget engagement because it takes a lot of energy for a narrow segment of people and it shunts it away to what looks like a glorified grant program. Okay, so that's my opinion on it. So, but if we can put something neutral in our document to put it out there and get community engagement on the idea, I think that's fair. And I just don't want to get wrapped around the axle in the middle of the summer with all of our stuff having to get washed of participatory budgeting, like the Charter Commission's stuff had to be washed once the ballot proposal was certified, or whatever. There's a certain point. Anyway, I would support Zach's explore the potential of type of language in recommendation number 4 that puts it in our document so that we're not ignoring it. We're happy to listen to ideas that may or may not be like the ballot measure that's proposed. I think that's fair.
So here I've got a question to that, Terry. There's 3 bullets here. Are you talking about a concatenation of the second and third one?
I think I'm talking about the 3rd bullet.
Yeah. And would that be under recommendation 4? Is that what that bullet, that sub bullet means?
Yeah, I guess 2 and 3, or the 2nd and 3rd bullets are sort of the same, but
yeah, I'm very comfortable with the 3rd bullet, and I'm happy with it being in recommendation 4.
Okay. So Zach, you still on board with that sort of approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a compromise. I understand, Jose, and money's in absentia right now. I think I acknowledge the reality that there's a desire to be concrete and have a very specific type of engagement, but ultimately our recommendation is that this kind of discipline and the officer for community engagement has the responsibility for designing anyway. So we can suggest it as one of a kind of myriad of alternatives that they consider in their design, and leave it at that.
Okay. I'm on board with that. Fred, you okay with that? Muted.
We're talking about the 3rd bullet.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's going to carry then. So now I guess we take these along with the previous slide of our other recommendations and do a roll call on all of that. And I think we would almost stay on schedule there. Any final discussion before we take a roll call on the whole proposal? Going once, going twice. All right. Then let's vote on the whole thing. Julia, want to call the roll?
Sure. Fred, you're muted.
Yes.
Zach,
I'm a yes.
Terry,
Yes.
and Money had to leave early. Thanks.
Okay, so next slide. Okay, so the summer engagement plan was sent out. You have a little bit of time left to provide any input or comment on it. Those of you in District and council operations have seen this as well. I don't have anything particular to say. I think it's a good plan. Zach, Fred, Jose, anybody?
I was
Fred,
waiting
anybody?
for the screen to show to show what the summer engagement plan, but going back to the original viewing of it at the beginning of the meeting, yeah, I think it'll work. I wasn't planning on doing anything else this summer.
Okay. Well, I
did
guess the
mean that
bottom
facetiously.
line is any comments to that engagement plan are due basically as soon as you can get them into June in particular, I guess, right? And it's, I guess that's it for that. June, you want to comment on this engagement plan? You want to say how great it is or something?
No, but happy to take more comments that folks have.
Well, I
June,
guess
did you want? Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Go ahead, Fred.
No, thank you. I was just wondering, do we want to hear from the budget office about, are they going to have a role? Again, we want to run our recommendations by the budget staff, right? And I was thinking if we're going to be hearing from the community, it'd be great if they did as well, but I guess we just share what we hear with them if they're not integrally involved with us. And again, they're not our budget office and we're not their advisory committee. But we are kind of on a parallel track because they're looking at how they need to revise the budget process for the future. How are we sufficiently engaging them through the summer?
I think that's a great point. I'm not sure it's directly on our engagement plan, but we did get some comments that sort of pointed out that our budget timeline schedule starts this summer. You know, the minute this budget gets passed, the current budget that they're working on gets passed, you start working on the next one with the economic outlook and some of those processes start early on. And it would be interesting to see if some of those could be implemented this fall as we're doing it. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get some comment from the budget office and hopefully they'll consider some of it, especially the early stuff, and get started. Okay, I think anything else on this? Next slide, I guess. So the upcoming meetings. Special meeting May 10th on the evaluation of the transition project. The next full GTAC meeting in May 15th, that's when this stuff will get presented. District and council operations meet May 20th. We are going to meet, oh look, it's May 23rd. And voter and candidate education outreach subcommittee May 28th. Next slide should be almost meeting adjourned. Next steps, just real quick. Julia and I will finish off the document with all of these recommendations. We'll get them out to you Monday, or we'll get them out to you as soon as possible with your absolutely final comments due Monday. And then it goes out to GTAC on Wednesday in time for their meeting the following. So that's our next steps. right? Might get that right? Okay. Now I think we are at the meeting adjourned. So thanks, everybody. Good meeting.